No longer in the mood to gaze at scenery, Mechamaru walked down the hall toward the dorm. Sometimes this action struck Kokichi as unusual. When he had first begun using the robot Mechamaru as a body, it had been a thrill. It was like in an anime. But living this way was unnatural. Mechamaru was a body that moved around Jujutsu High, but it wasn't interchangeable with the sorcerer controlling it. Kokichi hadn't set 1 foot outside the room that held his life support system. Mechamaru had been assigned a dorm room simply because it was an efficient space for storing a human-sized object. Even though Kokichi understood that intellectually, the act of returning Mechamaru to his dorm room felt more like parking a remote-controlled car in a garage than a real human action. Nonetheless, he paid attention to the interior decoration, so he had a pleasant space where he could enjoy private time and watch television. He supposed it was similar to how a normal human might chill with a screen playing video games. It felt relaxing, so he returned to his room whenever he had free time, much like any other student. On this day, he did not reach his room without incident. Aoi Todo, a man who seemed peculiar even to Mechamaru, was staring out the hallway window. His large build seemed even larger when he was indoors, and for a moment Mechamaru thought he was encountering a bear. Todo had his own way of impressing himself on others, and he could be quite intimidating. He would be a fierce and troublesome opponent, and he was a reassuring and troublesome ally. When a pitch struck him during the baseball game at the Goodwill event, members of both teams had praised the pitcher. There was a part of Kokichi that recoiled from Todo's forceful physical presence. The large boy had handled himself well during the recent intrusion by special-grade curse spirits, but Kokichi still felt pity for him, as if Mechamaru was in any position to take pity on others. Todo's foul temper today did not seem to stem from baseball.
"What's wrong? Why do you look so glum?"
Mechamaru asked. "I messed up the recording," Todo answered.
"What recording?"
Takeda was going to appear on a travel show on the day of the Goodwill event.
"Oh, right. You mentioned that."
Todo had refused Principal Gakuganji's words and stormed off. It wasn't particularly unusual, but Kokichi had thought at the time that it was irresponsible. Maybe the Blu-ray player at the Tokyo school was a piece of junk, or the invasion by the curse spirits messed it up, but I set the recorder and it didn't work.
"Didn't you record it at the dorm?"
Do you think I'd mess up the recording in my own home? That one turned out all right, of course. A vein was already bulging on Todo's forehead, so Kokichi chose his next words carefully.
"Then what's the problem?"
You shoot beams from your hands, right? So you must know about the Takatan beam.
"I've never heard of it."
How is that possible? Do you even take beams seriously? If Mechamaru had possessed movable features, he might have scowled in offense at Todo's anger. Sometimes he was grateful for his unresponsive face.
"I'll look it up."
The Takatan beam is Takeda's trademark pose. Make sure you do look it up, because she'll probably display it on the quiz show she's appearing on the day after tomorrow.
"Okay. So what does that have to do with anything?"
At the precise moment she did the Takatan beam on a TV show, a message showed up on screen about a terrorist attack in Kyoto traffic. Considering the timing, it may have been that mysterious curse user. Kokichi couldn't tell if Todo was being facetious or if he was seriously concerned. However, the vein throbbing on his forehead wasn't normal. He was so angry that to describe his state as agitated would be an understatement. The curse user you're gonna go take out, Todo clarified.
"It would seem my mission has become common knowledge,"
Mechamaru said. You gotta waste that curse user's ass. Their antics are causing damage all over the city, and they ruined Takeda's big moment. Kokichi realized that Todo was being serious, but he wasn't particularly relieved about it. Perhaps that discomfort showed in his posture because Todo raised his eyebrows. Aren't you serious about this mission? Todo asked.
"Yes, I'm serious,"
Mechamaru answered. Then answer me this. What type of girl do you like?
"What does that have to do with anything?"
Todo heaved a sigh. Well, you carry an awful heavy burden this time. Kokichi knew Todo had skills. Compared to Kamo, however, who was a better sorcerer in both skill and demeanor, Todo's behavior was strange and incomprehensible. Kokichi sometimes said things that irritated him, and it was frustrating to disappoint him without knowing why.
"What do you mean?"
Mechamaru asked. A person's sexuality explains everything about them. But you haven't answered my question. So you have an inclination, but you're hiding it. You can't just come out and say it. You're not a sorcerer.
"How does that make any sense?"
It does. A man who can't stand proud will never reign triumphant. And with no further explanation, Todo stomped off down the hallway.
"Well, if I had flesh and blood body, maybe I wouldn't be so hesitant,"
Kokichi thought. He considered the matter. Even if he had been fully flesh and blood, there was no reason he should have to tell Todo his preferences when it came to women. Todo could be persuasive with his rhetoric, but Kokichi didn't think his reasoning actually made any sense in this case. Still, Kokichi couldn't help but feel a little guilty. Todo had touched on something sensitive, and Kokichi suspected that if he had answered, they might have had a meaningful conversation about it. Alright, y'all. That is section 4 of chapter 2 of Mechamaru's chapter. Man, wasn't that painful? Well, I guess not painful. I might be being a little bit dramatic about how much pain is in these. But heartwarming. Really, this is just another one of those. It's kind of like last section with Kamo and Mechamaru, a stoic and a robot in the forest having a conversation. And in this chapter, we have a meathead moron and a robot in a dorm room hallway having a conversation. And both of them are trying to convey the exact same thing. They're trying to tell Mechamaru they give a shit. And that is so sweet and so sad and so painful. I am not crying. You're crying. I got a little bit of a giggle out of the fact that Mechamaru scales Kamo over Toto. Flat out says that in both skill and demeanor, Kamo is superior. And, I mean, I don't even know if Kamo would scale Kamo over Toto. I think the Goodwill event is kind of proof of that. But, so, you know, little LOL to Mechamaru's scaling skills. But that aside, these little character interactions, especially to those who know, are just really heart-wrenching. Because Mechamaru cares too. Mechamaru also gives a shit. So it's hard to watch. And it's hard to read. And next chapter gets even more, oh gosh. Miwa incoming! That's all I'm going to say about that. Another interesting, sad little tidbit in this chapter is the fact that his dorm room is essentially assigned to him because it's a convenient place to his dorm room is essentially assigned to him for storage. It's a good place to store a human-sized object. That is Mechamaru's life. It's the reason he has a dorm room. It's not a dorm room, it's a storage shed. And he's in a bathtub hooked up to life support somewhere. That's his reality. It's not class at Jujutsu Tech. His reality is a bathtub and chemicals. So, anyway, next chapter, Miwa! I will see you all there.